A small cabin on the lowest deck of a rusting station, 300 light-years from Earth. Emerald lightning hammers the viewport in slow, furious bursts. Inside a bed not built for two, a woman is sleeping on a man's chest, her hair a silver river across his shoulder, her skin the texture of moonlight, her long, delicate ears twitching at sounds he cannot hear. She is the sovereign of an entire star nation. She has not slept in 20 days. The man beneath her does not move. He is a maintenance worker. He fixes pipes. His brain is the one brain in 3,000 on this station that does not connect to the link, the great human neural mesh that lets the whole crew feel each other's joy and rage in real time. For 32 years, he has been told this makes him broken. She came looking for it, specifically, and outside the door, footsteps. Part 1. The room was dark, not pitch black, the kind of dark that lets a little green light bleed through. Outside the viewport, the storms of Orn 4 were doing their slow, furious dance, throwing emerald lightning across the void. Inside, on a bed that wasn't built for two, a woman was sleeping on a man's chest. Her hair was a silver river, spilled across his shoulder, across his collarbone, across the cheap synthetic fabric of the undershirt he'd worn yesterday and forgotten to change. His name was Rainer Halstead. He was 32 years old. He was a level 4 systems engineer. He fixed atmospheric scrubbers for a living. He had spent the last decade believing he was broken in a way that couldn't be fixed. And now the sovereign of the 7th house of the Vesperi was breathing softly against his neck like she'd been doing it her whole life. He didn't move. He wasn't sure he could. A voice came up from somewhere underneath the static in his head. His own voice. Older somehow. Tired in a good way. There are people who spend their whole lives looking for love. There are people who spend their whole lives looking for glory. She wasn't looking for either. She was just looking for somewhere quiet enough to sleep. 5 days earlier, the rust gut was the kind of place where the air had given up trying to pretend it was air. It was 70% recycled sweat, 30% metallic tang, 100% reason to keep your mouth shut while you worked. Reiner was elbow deep in the primary atmospheric scrubber of Section C. The machine was older than his grandfather's regrets. It was also currently making a sound like a dying whale in a trash compactor. "Come on, you bucket of bolts," he muttered into the ventilation shaft. "Give me a green light, or I'm letting the carbon dioxide turn the mess hall into very polite statues." The scrubber groaned back. He took that as encouragement. His comms unit chirped. Tobin's voice came through scratchy and tired the way Tobin's voice always was. "You alive in there, Halstead? Define alive. Breathing. Mostly upright. Not actively bleeding. Then yes. Tobin, I am tragically alive. The chief is on a warpath. He wants every engineer on the docking ring in 40 minutes. Full dress. Best smile. The aliens. The aliens. Tell him I'm covered in scrubber coolant and I look like I lost a fight with a paint can. He doesn't care what you look like. He cares that you're standing up straight when the queen walks past." Tobin paused. He also said if you skip again, he's spacing you without a suit. Heartwarming. He likes you. He really doesn't. Rainer wiped grease off his forehead. Left a dark streak across pale skin he didn't have the energy to scrub off. His implant gave its usual sad little spark behind his ear. The neural mesh that was supposed to connect him to the glorious collective consciousness of humanity. The same mesh that let everyone else share their breakfast opinions and their existential dread in real time. It had never worked. Not when he was 8, not when he was 18, not now. The medical board had a name for him. Static carrier, cortex null variant. 3 different doctors had used the word defect in 3 different tones of voice. The kindest of them had told him he was a rare and unfortunate variation of normal. The cruelest had called him a flatliner. On the zenith, that's the word that stuck. Flatliner. It was supposed to mean someone whose heart had stopped. On a station where everyone could feel everyone else through the link, it meant something worse. It meant you were the dead body at the dinner party. The one nobody could feel. The one nobody wanted to sit next to. He climbed out of the shaft, stretched, felt every one of his 32 years in his lower back. The docking ring was loud in a way the rust gut never was. Loud with anticipation. with the particular kind of dread you only get when a corporation is trying to look respectable. The Vesperi were arriving. He'd seen the briefing tape 3 times. Tall, translucent skin, long, delicate ears that twitched, eyes like swirling silver. They were the stuff of high-budget sci-fi dramas, the kind of species that made every other species feel underdressed. But their trick wasn't their looks. Their trick was the empath resonance. They didn't just see you, they felt you. Every petty thought, every flicker of want, every secret shame you'd been carrying since you were 9 years old. To a Vesperi, the average human station was a stadium full of people screaming, which meant the average Vesperi visit to the average human station was a polite form of torture. Rayner didn't know that yet. He found out 3 minutes later. The line of dignitaries stretched halfway around the ring, brass and middle management and engineers in their stiffest uniforms. He stood at the end of the line, where they always put him, close to the exit, far from the cameras. The doors hissed. She walked in. Calling her pretty was like calling a supernova a light bulb. She was tall. She was draped in a gown that shimmered from deep violet to a pale ghostly blue, and back again like the fabric couldn't decide what mood it was in. Her skin had the texture of moonlight. Her ears were long and delicate and twitched at sounds Rayner couldn't hear. She walked the line of dignitaries the way you walk a hospital corridor when someone you love is dying. Slow, controlled, trying not to scream. Her fingers were clenched at her sides. He saw the tremor in her jaw. She looked like someone trying to swim through a hurricane of invisible hands. When she reached him, she stopped. It was nothing. A microsecond. The kind of pause a person makes when they catch a familiar smell. But her eyes flicked up, met his. The static in his head, the constant, gentle nothing he'd lived inside his whole life. It sharpened. For 1 second, it was almost a sound. Almost. She gasped. Just a small sound, lost in the roar of the atmospheric fans. But it was there. Her handlers ushered her forward. The parade of perfection continued. Chief Voorhees was at his elbow before the doors had even closed. "Did she just look at you?" Voorhees whispered. His face was the color of bad cheese. "Maybe she liked my grease stains," Rayner said. "Don't joke. I'm not joking. I never joke. You're always joking." Rayner shrugged. His heart was doing something stupid and irregular against his ribs. He told it to stop. It didn't. He went back to his quarters. His quarters were a storage crate with a bed in it, 4 meters wide. Section D-47. A viewport the size of a dinner plate. A mattress that felt like it had been stuffed with recycled industrial waste. He sat on the edge of it. He stared out at the storms. He thought about Maren Holst. 5 years. It had been 5 years and the memory still came up the way a bruise comes up. Slow, yellow at the edges, tender in the middle. She was a biotechnician. She was 28 when they met. She wore her hair in 2 long braids and laughed at her own jokes before the punchline. She loved him in the careful, exhausting way you love someone you're trying to fix. They were sitting in the observation dome on the New Hope. Stars were blurring into long streaks of white. The ship was preparing for a jump. Everyone else on the dome was sinking. The neural mesh was lit up like a Christmas tree. You could almost taste the collective joy. Maren reached up. Her fingertips brushed the port behind his ear. She wanted to sink. It was supposed to be the most intimate thing 2 people could do. 2 minds, 1 feed, every flicker of affection, every nuance, a digital embrace that bridged the gap between 2 souls. He had tried so hard. He strained every fiber of his being to project something, anything, into the mesh. His brain was a fortress with the gates welded shut. Her face went through 3 expressions in the space of about 10 seconds. Hope, confusion. The thing that comes after confusion when you realize the door isn't going to open. "I can't feel you," she whispered. "I'm trying. You aren't trying. I am. You're empty, Rayner. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing nothing. It's like dating a mannequin. I need someone who can echo me back. I can't live in a house with no sound." He hadn't said anything. There wasn't anything to say. She transferred 2 weeks later. Research station near Jupiter. The last message she sent him wasn't a goodbye. It was a link to a medical paper. Cortex null neural variants. Causes. Possible therapies. Long-term prognosis. She had wanted to fix him. That was what hurt the most. Not the leaving. The fact that she had seen his quiet as a broken component. A thing to be replaced. He had spent 5 years agreeing with her. 5 years lying on the same mattress. Telling himself she was right. That he was a failure of evolution. A man who couldn't echo. A house with no sound. He blinked. The storms of Oran 4 swirled outside the viewport. His chronometer said it was 1900 hours. He hadn't eaten. He didn't feel like eating. He stripped down to his undershirt. Lay back. Let the rhythmic thrum of the fusion core lull him towards something close enough to sleep. The last thought he had before he went under was about her ears. The Vesperi sovereign. The way her ears had twitched as she walked past him. The way she had gasped. Like a person who had just walked into a room and finally heard silence for the first time. Then he was gone. Waking up was usually a tactical maneuver. 3 alarms, a lot of groaning, a mental checklist of which systems were going to explode before noon. Not this morning. The air didn't smell like recycled ozone. It didn't smell like the stale coffee he'd left on his desk 3 days ago. It smelled like night-blooming jasmine and cold, clean rain. A scent that should not exist on a mining station 300 light-years from Earth. The second thing he noticed was the weight. His left arm was pinned. Something warm, something soft, something distinctly alive. He opened one eye, he opened the other. He considered closing both and hoping the brain aneurysm his doctor had been predicting for years had finally arrived on schedule. Sovereign Celine Vera of the 7th house of the Vesperi was asleep on his chest. Her head was tucked under his chin. Her silver hair was spilled across his shoulder. One of her hands' long, slender fingers tipped with iridescent nails was resting right over his heart. She was still wearing her formal robes. They were now hopelessly rumpled. His brain didn't stall. It went into full system crash. Option 1, scream, result. Security enters, seizes the Queen of the Nebula in his bed, executes him on the spot for interstellar kidnapping. Option 2, move, result. She wakes, realizes she's in a maintenance worker's bunk. Her guards execute him on the spot. Option 3, die of embarrassment. Result. His body is found by cleaning drones in 3 days. Highly preferable. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, breathing in shallow hitches. He was terrified to move. He was terrified to stay still. He could feel the heat coming off her body. For someone who looked like she was made of moonlight, she was surprisingly solid. Her ears up close were intricate, covered in fine silver down. They twitched every few seconds, brushed against his neck. It was the most intimate thing that had happened to him in 5 years. It was currently a capital offense. "This isn't happening," he whispered to the ceiling. "This is a hallucination, brought on by Sector 7 fungus." She shifted. Her hand tightened slightly on his shirt. Her fingers curled into the cheap fabric. She let out a small, contented sigh, nuzzled closer into the crook of his neck. His heart was hammering hard enough to wake the dead. Except she didn't react. Except his heart, hammering as it was supposed to be screaming directly into the neural mesh. Anyone on the station should have been able to feel it. Especially her. She felt nothing. Because he was a flatliner. Because his head was empty. Because for the first time in his life, that was the only thing keeping them both alive. Her eyes snapped open. They weren't the distant, swirling pools of silver he'd seen at the docking ring. They were wide, sharp, clouded with the disorientation of deep sleep. She didn't move. She didn't scream. She stared at the wall of his cabin for a long, agonizing 10 seconds. Then very slowly, she tilted her head back to look at him. They held that look for what felt like a year. A level 4 engineer, a galactic sovereign, tangled together in a bed that wasn't even big enough for one person. "You're still here," she said. Her voice was a low melodic thrum, like a crystal bowl that had just been struck. "It's my room," he managed to croak, contractually speaking. "I'm supposed to be here." She didn't pull away. She pushed herself up on one elbow. Her hair fell around them like a curtain. Her expression wasn't outrage. It wasn't fear. It was something else. He'd never seen the expression on a Vesperi before. He'd never seen it on a human either. Not directed at him, not in a long time. Relief. Pure, unadulterated relief. The silence. She whispered, "It's still here, even when you're awake." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice an octave too high. "If I'm being too quiet, I can. I don't know. Hum a tune." "What are you doing here, Your Majesty? How did you even get in?" "Security is supposed to be, well, they're supposed to be better than this." She sat up. Her robes shifted color, settled into a soft pale gray. Calm. "The doors on this station are designed to keep out physical threats," she said. Her voice was regaining some of its regal composure, though her hands were still trembling. "They are not designed to keep out someone who is desperate for air." Desperate for air. He looked at the scrubber readout on his desk. "The oxygen levels are at 98%. I fixed that scrubber yesterday." She let out a small, fragile laugh. "Not that kind of air." "Rainer Halstead." He froze. "How do you know my name?" "I saw it on the roster, but more than that, I felt it when I passed you. Or rather, I felt the absence of it." She reached out. Her hand hovered just inches from his forehead. She didn't touch him. She seemed almost afraid to. "My people. We are born into a storm. We feel the echoes of every mind around us. On this station with its 3,000 stressed, ambitious, fearful humans, it was like being buried alive in a mountain of screaming voices." She paused, swallowed. "I haven't slept in 20 days. He stared at her. 20 days. "I was breaking," she said, quietly. "And then I walked past you, and there was nothing. No voice, no want, just quiet." He started to ask a question, stopped, tried again. "So you just walked here?" She nodded. "You didn't even know me." "I didn't need to know you. I needed to find you." A queen, in his bed, because his head was empty. He thought he might actually laugh. He thought he might actually cry. He did neither. He sat up slowly, made sure she had room, tried not to think about the fact that her hand was still resting on his shirt. "Look," he said, "I'm glad my defective brain is a luxury spa for you, but we are in a massive amount of trouble." She tilted her head. "If the chief finds you here, they are not going to ask about your sleep quality. They are going to assume I committed a crime against the galaxy. Then we shall have to be very careful," she said. "We." She looked at his face, at the grease he hadn't scrubbed off, at the cabin no bigger than a closet, at the storm raging outside the dinner plate viewport. "I am not going back to that noise. Rainer Halstead, not yet." She leaned forward. She pressed her palm against his cheek. Her skin was cool. Where she touched him, there was a strange tingling warmth. Not a neural connection. Something older than that. Something more human. "Don't lock your door." "Engineer." She slid off the bed. She slipped out of the room before he could find the words to tell her how terrible an idea this was. He sat there a long time. The scent of jasmine slowly faded. The smell of grease and recycled air came back. He had a duty shift in 40 minutes. He was for the first time in his life not entirely sure who he was. He spent the day in the rust gut. He spent the day not thinking about the woman who had slept on his chest. He spent the day failing at not thinking about it. By 1900 hours, he was back in his cabin. He was showered. He was clean. He was wearing the only undershirt he had that wasn't actively stained. He looked at the door. He didn't lock it. Just one more night, he told himself. If she doesn't come, I lock the door tomorrow. I never look back. I forget the whole thing. He lay down. The storms of Orin 4 were violent tonight. Flashes of green lightning. The kind of beautiful you can only appreciate from behind reinforced glass. He had almost convinced himself she wasn't coming when the door hissed open. She didn't walk in. She practically fell. Different robes this time. Obsidian black. They were flickering like a dying television screen. Black, red, black, red. Her ears were pinned flat against her skull. She was shaking. Rainer. She got 2 syllables out, and then her knees gave. He caught her on the second step. He wasn't a strong man. He fixed pipes for a living. But he was strong enough. He got her to the bed. He got her sitting. He put a hand on the back of her neck and tilted her forward so she could breathe. "Hey," he said. "Hey, the dinner," she whispered. "Yeah." It was like being doused in hot oil. Okay. The greed, the envy, the crushing weight of their expectations. I couldn't. "You don't have to talk." She looked up at him. Her silver eyes were huge, wet at the corners. He had not until that moment known a Vesperi could cry. "I'm not here for sleep tonight," she said. He waited. She tried to say something. Couldn't. Tried again. Couldn't. "Just talk to me," she finally said. About anything. He didn't know what to do with that. He fixed pipes for a living. He wasn't a talker. He had spent his whole adult life perfecting the art of saying nothing in particular for hours on end. But she was sitting there, shaking, looking at him like he was a lighthouse. He took a breath. He cleared his throat. "There was a sailor," he said, "on Earth about 600 years ago, long before we even left the planet." She blinked. He didn't stop. His name was, I don't remember his name, just that he was old. He worked a fishing boat off a coast that doesn't exist anymore. The water there was the color of pewter most days, the kind of gray that doesn't have any other gray inside it, just one shade of cold. She wasn't shaking quite as hard. He kept going. He was caught in a storm, a bad one, the kind that turns the sky into a bruise. His crew was gone. His mast was gone. He was tied to what was left of his deck with a rope around his waist. The radio still worked, barely, and through the static he could hear his mother, singing. He couldn't tell if she was really there or if his brain was making it up to keep him alive. Celine's breathing was slowing. He noticed. He kept going. He survived. They found him 2 days later. He didn't talk for a year after that. He died at 83, quietly, in a chair by a window. The thing he said at the end was that he never stopped hearing her singing through the static, not for the rest of his life. He stopped. He looked down. Celine was asleep. Her head was on his shoulder. Her hand was loose in his lap. Her ears, the ears that had been pinned flat with pain, had relaxed. They twitched gently at the sound of his breathing. She was asleep. She was asleep. He didn't move. He didn't dare to move. He stayed in that exact position for the next 6 hours. When she woke, the artificial dawn was already creeping into the room. Pale gold, soft, the kind of light that made even the storms outside look gentle. She sat up slowly. She looked at him. She put her hand to her own face like she wasn't sure it was still there. "I slept," she whispered. "Yeah, 6 hours." Raynor did the math. "That's significantly more than 0. She let out a sound that was half a laugh and half something else. Something raw. "Raynor, I didn't sleep last night because of you." "Sorry." "No, I didn't sleep because the silence wasn't enough. Not anymore. I was. The room was too quiet. I needed something to follow. Something with a shape. A path, something that wasn't a void." He didn't understand. He said so. She tried to find the words. "My people don't tell stories," she said. "We have echoes, we have light weavings, we have music. But a story is a thing that moves forward in a line. From a beginning, through a middle, to an end. We don't think that way. We think in webs, resonances, everyone speaking at once. Okay, what you did, your voice, the sailor, the water, the mother singing through the static. It gave my mind a path to follow. A path. Yes. Out of the storm. Yes." She looked at him like he had just handed her something irreplaceable. He looked away. Because he was a maintenance worker. He was a flatliner. He was a man whose ex-girlfriend had once called him a mannequin. And he didn't know what to do with the look on the face of a queen who had just discovered the concept of a bedtime story. The third night he had a story ready. He'd thought about it all day, while he was crawling through ducts, while he was tightening valves, while Voorhees was barking at him to look busy in the upper quarters. He had been quietly building a story in his head, a second one, about a lighthouse keeper. She came at the same time, 1100. She knocked this time. 2 soft taps. He let her in. She was less ragged tonight, but not by much. He had something for her. He held it up. She looked at it like he was holding a small, dangerous animal. "That is," she said, "synthetic chocolate. That is a bar of synthetic chocolate. 80% chemicals, 20% pure joy. The health board has banned it on this station 3 separate times. I have a stash because I have terrible coping mechanisms." He broke off a square, handed it to her. She held it between 2 iridescent fingertips, studied it, sniffed it, touched it with the tip of her tongue. Her ears lifted. The corners of her mouth turned up, barely, like a part of her face was remembering a thing it had been told not to do. "Oh," she said. He grinned. I know. I know. This is illegal in 3-star systems. Probably more than 3. She ate the square. He ate one too. They sat against the wall on his bunk with their shoulders touching, and they ate chocolate that tasted like every promise his species had ever broken to itself. "Tell me," she said. "The lighthouse." Yes. So he told her about the lighthouse, about a woman who lived alone on a rock in the middle of the sea, about the way her lantern turned all night, about the ships that passed her in the dark and never knew her name, about how she came to believe over the long, quiet years that her job was not to be seen. Her job was to be there. Celine listened. Celine laughed once. It was a short, small sound, surprised by itself. He looked at her sideways. "That was a laugh," he said. "I'm aware. I made the Queen of the Nebula laugh. Don't get used to it." When the story ended, she didn't fall asleep immediately. She turned her head and looked at him in the dim green light. "You have done this before," she said. "What?" "This. The story. Where do they come from?" He shrugged, felt himself shrug. Wasn't entirely sure why. "I don't know." "You don't know. I just, they come up. They feel like they've been there a long time." She studied him. "Reiner Halstead," she said, "you have been carrying a library inside that quiet head of yours, and you didn't know it." He didn't answer that. He didn't trust his voice to answer that. She lay down. Eventually, her head on his shoulder again, her hand loose against his ribs. She slept. He didn't. He stared at the ceiling. He thought about Maren Holst saying he was empty. He thought very carefully that maybe she had been wrong. The morning shift was loud. The kind of loud that has nothing to do with sound. It was the loud of 300 people on a station, all knowing that something was being staged. Something corporate. Something that smelled like a press release. Tobin caught him on the way to the lift. "There you are. Here I am. You hear what's happening at 1400. Rayner stopped. "What's happening at 1400? Voorhees called an assembly. Promenade B, half the station. He's calling it a recognition ceremony. He says he wants to thank the engineering crew for their work during the Vesperi delegation." Reiner stared at him. "Voorhees wants to thank engineering. I know. For their work. I know. That's not a thing he does. I know that Halstead. That's why I'm telling you. There's a man with him. Came in 2 days ago on a corporate shuttle. Dressed too well to be from here. Investigator something." Reiner's stomach dropped 1 full level. "Thorne," Tobin said. "Yeah, you know him. Not personally. He's central office. Internal affairs. The kind of internal affairs that has its own black suit budget." Rayner went to the assembly. He didn't have a choice. Voorhees had specifically requested every engineer in dress kit. Rayner's dress kit was a clean coverall he hadn't worn in 2 years. It still smelled faintly of the laundry he'd run it through that morning. He looked like a man playing dress-up in his own job. The promenade was packed. Half the station was there, maybe more. Brass at the front, scugs in the back. The Vesperi delegation, the official one, the polite one, was lined up along the upper balcony. He could see Voris. He could see 2 of the other counselors. He could see Celine. She was on the balcony in her formal robes, pale silver, calm, regal. She did not look at him. She had been very careful all morning not to look at him. Voorhees took the dais. He talked for 10 minutes about the proud tradition of Ethelgard engineering. He talked about teamwork. He talked about the unique challenges of mining operations in the Orange sector. He talked about the warm welcome the station had given to its esteemed Vesperi guests. Raynor stood at the back. He felt the floor go a little soft under his boots, because he knew where this was going. Because Voorhees had never in his life given a speech that didn't end with someone bleeding. There is one engineer, Voorhees said, who deserves particular mention. The crowd shifted. Raynor did not move. Engineer Halstead, Voorhees said. Step forward. He stepped forward. He felt 100 eyes on him. He felt Celine's eyes on him from the balcony. He didn't look up. Engineer Halstead is, Voorhees said, a unique member of our crew. A pause. Most of you may not know this, but Engineer Halstead is what's known in the medical literature as a static carrier, a cortex null variant. The crowd murmured. His neural link does not function, has never functioned. He cannot connect to the mesh. The murmur got louder. Voorhees raised his hand. Now! The corporation does not tolerate discrimination based on neurological condition. So we have proudly employed Engineer Halstead for the past 8 years. He pays his rent. He fixes his scrubbers. We have given him every opportunity to contribute. Pause. A small, thin pull at the corner of his mouth. But I think it is important, in a moment such as this, with our esteemed Vesperi guests present, for everyone to understand exactly what Engineer Halstead represents to this station. Raynor felt his hands close into fists at his sides. Engineer Halstead is in fact classified as corporate property under Section 17 of his employment contract. Due to the unique research value of his condition, a gasp from somewhere in the crowd. His brain is, to put it in terms you can all understand, a piece of equipment we are evaluating for potential applications. He is not a colleague. He is an asset. The word landed. Asset. The crowd went silent. Even Tobin, who was 3 rows back, had gone very still. Raynor did not move. He did not look up at the balcony. He did not need to. He could feel her now. Not the way the others felt her. He couldn't read minds. He couldn't catch echoes. But there are some things a flatliner can still feel. He could feel her looking at him. He could feel her looking and not breathing and not blinking. We thank Engineer Halstead, Voorhees said, his voice oily with something close to triumph, for his ongoing contribution to corporate research. We are sure he will continue to serve the company with distinction. A polite scattered round of applause. Raynor stepped back into the line. His face did not change. He had practiced his face for a long time. He had spent 32 years practicing his face. On the balcony above him, the sovereign Celine Vera of the 7th house of the Vesperi was wearing a gown that had been calm and silver 3 minutes ago. It was now a deep arterial red. The counselors next to her had stepped back 2 paces. Voris was looking at her with something close to alarm. He had not, in the 400 years of his service to the 7th house, ever seen his sovereign's robes turn that particular shade. It was the color of the sky right before a moon breaks. She turned, without a word. She walked off the balcony. She walked all the way back to her quarters. She did not speak to her handlers. She did not speak to her guards. She closed the door behind her, and she stood in the center of her room, and her robes did not change color for 1 full hour. The assembly broke up. People went back to their shifts. Raynor went back to the rust gut. He fixed a coolant valve. He recalibrated a thermal regulator. He did not eat lunch. He did not eat dinner. He went to his cabin at 2100. He sat on the edge of his bed. He looked at the door. He thought for the first time in 3 days that he should lock it. He thought about Maren Holst's face when she pulled her hand back from the port behind his ear. He thought about the word asset. He thought about how his own chief, the man he had worked under for 8 years, had stood in front of half the station and said it like he was reading the weather. He didn't lock the door. He sat very still. He waited. He didn't have to wait long. The door hissed open at 2200. She didn't fall this time. She walked in. She walked like a queen. She walked like someone who had walked across more rooms than he could imagine, in more palaces than he could name on more worlds than he had ever seen. Her robes were still a deep red, not arterial now, steady, banked, like a fire that has been told to stay where it is and is choosing for the moment to obey. She stopped 2 steps inside the door. She looked at him. He looked at her. "Rainer Halstead," she said. Her voice was quiet, but the quiet had teeth. "They tore you open," she said, "in front of 1,000 people. Yeah. They called you a piece of equipment. Yeah. They called you an asset. Yeah." She crossed the rest of the room in 3 steps. She knelt down in front of him, her gown spread out around her on the metal floor like a pool of blood. She took his hands in hers. Her fingers were ice cold. "I am not going to let that happen again," she said. "Do you understand me? Celine, look at me." He looked at her. Her silver eyes were swimming. Her robes shifted just a hair from red to something deeper, something older. "I have stood at the head of my house for 120 years. I have endured grief. I have endured war. I have endured the death of the only other man who ever loved me without trying to use me." He flinched at that. She didn't notice. She kept going. "I have watched my people scream in my head every day of my life. I have not been allowed to weep in public since I was 6 years old. I have not been allowed to scream. I have not been allowed to disappear." She drew a breath. And then she said something he was going to think about on and off for the rest of his life. "But I have never, not once, in all my time as sovereign, watched a man be torn apart in front of a crowd and done nothing about it." He couldn't speak. She did not let go of his hands. "So you are going to listen to me, Rainer Halstead," she said. "They are not going to do that to you again. Not while I am alive. Not while I have a crown on my head. Not while I have a single word left to speak in any council on any world. The Vesperi do not have a story for this. We have an echo for grief. We have a song for loss. We have a light weaving for love. But we have never had a story for what you are." She squeezed his hands. "So we are going to have to make one together." She did not move from where she was kneeling. She did not let go. The lights of Oran 4 turned green and gold against the viewport. Somewhere far above them on the station, Chief Voorhees was pouring himself a drink and feeling very pleased with his morning's work. Somewhere in a sealed corporate shuttle docked at Bay 19, Investigator Thorne was filing his preliminary report on a tactical anomaly designated Subject K-771. Somewhere in a research facility, no one on this station had ever heard of a man older than Reiner, sat in a small white room, and did not know that his son had just been called an asset on live corporate feed. And in a cabin the size of a closet on the lowest deck of the rusting Ethelgard Zenith, a queen who had not slept in 20 days knelt in front of a man who had not been seen in 20 years. She did not let go of his hands. He did not pull them away. The storms of Oran 4 kept dancing. The story was not over. It was, in fact, just beginning. Part 2. She did not let go of his hands. That was the part that stayed with him later. Not the speech, not the words, not the fact that the sovereign of an entire star nation had knelt on the metal floor of a maintenance worker's quarters and made him a promise. The fact that her fingers stayed in his, long after she had finished talking. Long after the red in her robes had faded back to a dim, quiet violet. Long after he had tried twice to pull his hands back and been kept where he was. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know this is going to cost you. I know. I am a maintenance worker, Celine. I know you are a queen." She tilted her head. The corners of her mouth lifted. "Barely." "I am aware," she said. "It comes up at most diplomatic functions." He almost laughed. He didn't quite manage it. She stood, slowly, the way a person stands when their knees remember they are 120 years old. She kept one of his hands. She tugged him to his feet. "Stand up," she said. He stood. She studied him in the green-gold light of the viewport. "You have not eaten today." You have not eaten today, Rainer." Define eaten. She made a sound. He thought it might be a laugh. It might also have been a polite Vesperi attempt at strangling him. She produced something from inside her robes, a small wrapped square. He'd seen them in pictures. Vesperi travel bread, pale, honey-colored, supposedly tasted like every good memory you'd ever had. He took it. He looked at it. Are you feeding me? I am. That is what? That is a thing queens do. It is now. He took a bite. It did not taste like every good memory he'd ever had. It tasted like cold butter and warm honey and a song he could almost remember. He chewed slowly. He sat down on the bed without meaning to. She sat next to him. Their shoulders touched. You are very tired, she said. I am very tired. So am I. They sat there for a while. The storms kept doing their slow, furious dance. He chewed. She watched him chew. When he was done, she reached up and brushed a crumb off the corner of his mouth. He held very still. She held very still. There it is, he thought. The thing I am going to remember on my deathbed. The sovereign of the seventh house, brushing a crumb off my face. In a closet, on a rusted station, over a planet I can't even spell. You should sleep, she said. You should sleep, he said back. We agree then. We do. She did not move. He did not move. Eventually he lay back. She lay back. Her head fit like she'd always done this in the curve of his shoulder. Her ears twitched against his neck. The static in his head was a wide, quiet field. The field she had been walking through looking for 20 days. He thought just before sleep took him that he had spent 5 years lying on this exact mattress, wishing not to be empty. And then a queen had come looking specifically for empty. And that maybe the universe was a little less of a poorly maintained piece of hardware than he had given it credit for. He slept. She slept. The storms went on without them. He woke at 5. She was gone. The pillow next to him was still warm. A single silver hair was on it. He picked it up, held it between his fingers, wound it around the tip of his thumb. He did not know why. He didn't have a category for what he was doing. He stuck it in the drawer of his desk, behind the spare wrenches. Then he got dressed and went to work. Section 9 was on fire. Not literally. Not yet. But the air had the quality it gets right before a thing breaks. The corporation had rerouted 30% of the power from the lower sectors to keep the neon marrow looking like a paradise for the Vesperi, which meant the mining decks were now running on margin. Hot, thin. The temperature in the ore processor bay was at 35 Celsius. The link mesh, struggling for bandwidth, was throwing feedback across the lower decks like a bad amplifier. The miners felt it. Their link feed was full of corporate anxiety from the upper levels. Voorhees' ambition, Thorne's calculation, the Vesperi delegation's fear of being touched by all of it, none of which the miners had asked for, all of which was now thrumming directly into the back of their skulls while they swung pneumatic hammers in heat that was already pushing them to the edge. The miners walked off. By 1120 of them were standing in the central promenade. By 1105, security had been called. By 1110, Tobin was on Rayner's comms unit screaming at him to stay in the gut. Halstead, stay where you are. I'm fixing a regulator. Forget the regulator. The miners are about to riot. Security is moving in. Voorhees has the prods out. There are 6 guards, 20 of them. It is about to get extremely loud up there. Rayner stood up. He'd been crouched in a crawl space patching a coolant leak. Neon green fluid was still dripping off his elbows. He looked down at himself. He looked up at the comms unit. Halstead. Yeah. Don't. I'm not. Don't go up there. I'm not going up there. He went up there. He didn't decide to go up there. His feet decided. His feet had been deciding things on his behalf for the past 3 days. His feet had decided that Celine was going to come back. His feet had decided that he wasn't going to lock the door. His feet apparently had now decided that he was going to walk straight into the middle of a riot. The promenade was bad. The miners were on one side, faces smeared with ore dust, eyes wild with neural exhaustion. Sweat soaked through their work fatigues. They were leaning into each other, their minds merging into one large mindless animal of resentment. Across from them, 6 security guards, shock prods drawn, faces a different kind of wild. Henderson at the front, A decent guy on a regular day. Today he looked like he was about to swallow his own tongue. Reiner walked into the space between them. Voss? Henderson barked. Halstead, Reiner said. Whatever your name is. Get the hell out of here. This is a restricted zone. Reiner didn't look at him. He looked at the lead miner, an old man named Silas, 40 years in the pits, currently shaking with rage that wasn't even his. Silas, he said. Silas didn't see him. Silas was somewhere else. Silas, Reiner said again. Look at me. Silas's eyes flicked. Found him. Couldn't hold him. Reiner reached out. He put his hand on Silas's shoulder. It was a stupid thing to do, a reckless thing. In the state Silas was in, he could have broken Reiner's arm without thinking about it. He didn't. His skin met Reiner's, and something happened. Reiner didn't have a word for it. Not yet. He would later. He would call it the door opening. The thing he had spent 32 years pretending wasn't a thing. The rage flowing off Silas, the jagged red of it, the way it was vibrating into the mesh, picking up speed building, looking for somewhere to go. It hit Reiner. It flowed into him. It did not bounce. It did not echo. It did not amplify. It went in. And then it went somewhere else. Some other place. A place that wasn't part of the link at all. A place Reiner had been carrying around inside his own head his whole life without knowing. Silas blinked. His eyes cleared by about a third. He took a breath that wasn't a gasp. Halstead. Hey. It's so quiet. I know. Reiner didn't take his hand off Silas's shoulder. He turned, just his head, just his voice. Henderson, yeah. Put the prods down. Voss. It's Halstead. Right. Halstead. I can't. You can. Look at them. They're already coming down. You're the loop now. You drop the prods, the loop drops. Henderson stared. Henderson dropped the prods. The other guards followed about a second later, like they had been waiting for someone, anyone to give them permission to stop. The miners exhaled. It happened all at once, like a single lung that had been held for too long. 20 pairs of shoulders dropped. 20 faces softened. Silas put his own hand over Reiner's on his shoulder. What the hell are you? He whispered. Reiner didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. He let go of Silas. He stepped back. He nodded once at Henderson. He turned around and walked very calmly back the way he had come. He did not run. He did not look back. His hands were shaking by the time he reached the lift. He went back down to the rust gut. He patched the coolant leak. He pretended his hands weren't shaking. That night she didn't fall. She walked in, steady, almost regal. She had heard somehow. He didn't ask how. Word moved through the link the way fire moves through dry grass. You were in the middle of it, she said. Hi to you too. You were in the middle of a riot, and you walked into it, with your bare hands. I had gloves. Reiner. He sat down on the bed. I didn't decide to, he said. My feet did. Your feet. It's a foot situation. I see. She sat next to him. What did you feel, she asked, when you touched him? He thought about it. I felt. He started and stopped. Tried again. I felt his anger. It came into me, and then it wasn't there anymore. Like it. Fell through me. Into something underneath. I don't know what's underneath. I don't know if there is an underneath. I don't know. He laughed. Short, dry. For 32 years I have been told I am a hole, a flat spot, a defect, and today I touched a man who was about to kill someone, and I made him stop. By being a hole. Celine. I made him stop by being a hole. She looked at him for a long time. Reiner Halstead, she said. Yeah. You are not a hole. I'm a hole. You are a doorway. He stared at her. A doorway. A doorway with somewhere on the other side of it. Whatever it is, wherever it goes, you are not empty. You are a path from the noise of the world to elsewhere. He had no response to that. He had been called a lot of things in his life. He had never been called a doorway. She reached up, touched his cheek, same way as before. cool fingers, old warmth underneath them. "I want to tell you something," she said. "Okay, it is a story." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't tell stories." "I am going to try." She took her hand off his face. She placed it in her own lap. She looked at it. His name was Ilion. She said, "Vera." "He took my name when we bonded. That is our custom. He took it because he said his own house had given him nothing he wanted to keep." Reiner did not move. He had felt this story coming the way you feel a storm coming through your hip, long before it arrived. "He was a musician," Celine said. "A composer. He worked with light. Our musicians braid light into sound and then back into light again. He was the best of his generation, the best of 3 generations, the best of my life." A pause. "We were bonded for 10 years. He was." Celine's voice did something, the voice equivalent of a hand reaching for something to hold on to and finding nothing. He was a quiet man. Not the way you are quiet, not a doorway, just a gentle volume of a man, the kind of person whose mind made very small, soft sounds inside the resonance. Most days I could find him in the noise the way you find a single candle in a room of mirrors. She drew a breath. "I am the sovereign," she said. "I am the vessel for the entire 7th house. Their grief is my grief. Their joy is my joy. Their fear, their wanting, their resentment, their dreaming. All of it lives in me, every minute, every day. For 10 years I gave it to him. Not on purpose. I did not know I was doing it. We bonded, we loved each other. And when I came home each day with the storm of my people still echoing in me, I leaned my head on his shoulder. And the storm went where it could go. It went into the quiet of him." She stopped. She looked at her hand again, like she did not understand whose hand it was. "I did not know," she said. "I swear to you, Rainer, I did not know." He was burning very slowly the entire time, like a candle in a dark room. And I was the room. One morning, 4 years ago, he did not wake up. The Vespri doctors had a word. Noise burnout. They had seen it once or twice before in pairs of bonded mates where one carried far more resonance than the other. They had never seen it in a sovereign's husband. They were very gentle with me. They told me it was not my fault. She looked at Rainer. It was of course my fault. She said it like a person delivering a verdict on themselves. The kind of verdict you have read out in your own voice in your own head every morning for 4 years. "I killed the man I love by needing him. By needing him too much. By needing him to be quiet for me without ever once asking him if it was costing him anything." Rainer could not for a moment find his voice. He found it. "Celine, let me finish." "Okay. When I walked into your room the first night, I told myself it was a passing thing, a novelty, a one-night gift from a generous universe. I would sleep, I would leave, I would never come back. I came back. I came back again. I came back tonight. Reiner, you are doing for me what he did, what it killed him to do. You are taking the storm and you are sending it somewhere else. I have asked you, without ever asking you, to do that. I will not do that to a second man." She turned to face him. Her eyes were very bright. "I am leaving tomorrow morning," she said, "with the delegation. I am going to go home. I am going to sleep when I can. I am going to scream when I cannot. And I am going to remember you for the rest of my long life as the second time I was forgiven for being a queen. I am not going to kill you, Rainer Halstead. I will not do it twice." He sat very still. Inside his head, the static was doing nothing it had ever done before. It was not white noise. It was not a quiet field. It was listening. She waited. He did not say what she expected him to say. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't tell her she was wrong. He said something else. He took her hand. He said, "Celine." She looked up. "You're wrong about one thing," he said. "What? You think you killed him?" She didn't answer. "You didn't kill him. The noise killed him. The crown killed him. The job killed him. He chose to love you, and he chose to keep loving you, and he loved you the way a candle loves the dark room. He didn't have a choice about going out. He had a choice about whether to be lit. He chose to be lit. You don't get to take that from him by calling it murder." Her shoulders started to shake, very slightly. He kept going. And, he said, about me. You're wrong about that too. She made a small sound. You think you are asking me to be a candle? He said. You're not. I'm a doorway. You said it yourself, 5 minutes ago. You don't burn down a doorway by walking through it. You just walk through. I cannot promise that. You don't have to. I cannot guarantee. Celine, I have been sitting in a closet by myself for 10 years. I am not in any position to refuse a doorway-related job opportunity. She laughed. It was a wet, ragged laugh. The kind you laugh when crying and laughing are doing a small, confused arm wrestle inside your chest. I am serious, she said. So am I. You could be hurt. I have been hurt. You could be worse hurt. I have been worse hurt. Rainer. Celine. He turned her hand over in his. He looked at her palm. Vesperi palms had no lines, they were smooth, like the inside of a shell. He spoke to her palm. A woman left me, he said, 5 years ago. Her name was Maren Holst. She was a biotechnician. She tried to sync with me one night on a transport ship, and when she couldn't feel anything, she pulled her hand back like she had touched a hot pan. He breathed. She called me a mannequin. She said dating me was like dating a house with no sound. She transferred 2 weeks later and sent me a medical paper about static carriers. As a goodbye. I have spent 5 years thinking she was right, that I was a hole, that I was a defect, that whatever woman ever sat across from me in any kitchen on any station was going to one day pull her hand back exactly the way Maren pulled it back, because that is what people do when they realize the house is empty. He looked up. You did not pull your hand back. You came in, you sat down, you said, this is mine. I would rather be killed by a queen than left by another biotechnician, Celine. I would rather be a doorway you walk through too many times than a mannequin no one ever saw. She was crying. She didn't make a sound. A Vesperi cries the way moonlight cries. Just a wetness, a shine. No drama, no noise. She put her forehead against his. Rainer. She whispered, yeah. You are a fool. I know I love you. He stopped breathing for one whole second. She didn't say it again. She didn't have to. She just kept her forehead against his and breathed very softly through her nose. And he sat there with the Queen of the Nebula crying without sound on his shoulder. And he thought with what was left of his rational mind that 32 years of being a flatliner had been a small price to pay for this. A small price. A very small price. He found his voice. Don't go home tomorrow, he said. I have to. Don't. The corporation has already. Don't. She pulled back, looked at him. What are you saying? I'm saying take me with you. Rainer, I'm not safe here. You're not safe here. They called me an asset in front of 1,000 people, Celine. They said it like a fact. They have a contract clause. They are going to come for me. I would rather be a doorway on a planet you can pronounce than an asset in a lab somewhere with my own face on the file. She stared at him. You don't know what you're asking. I think I do. You would be the only human for 1,000 light years. You would be a stranger forever. My people would not know what to do with you. Some of them would hate you. Some of them would want to study you. You would never see Earth again. You would never see Maren Holst again. You would never see the sailor's coast that doesn't exist anymore. I never see those things now. I see a viewport the size of a dinner plate and a man named Voorhees calling me an asset on a Tuesday. Rainer. Celine. She closed her eyes. She opened them. You are a fool, she said again. I am. But you are my fool now. Is that what you are telling me? It's... He started. It's exactly what I'm telling you. She put her hand on his cheek for the third time. She kissed him. It wasn't a long kiss. It wasn't a movie kiss. It wasn't a coronation. It was small. It was dry. It was the kind of kiss two tired people give each other when they have just decided against all reason to ruin both of their lives in the same direction. It was the best kiss he had ever had in his life. She pulled back. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I will come for you. In the morning, be ready." She left. The door hissed shut. He stood in the middle of his cabin with his hand against his own cheek, and he thought very clearly. This is the day. This is the day my life starts. It was not yet the day his life started. It was the day his life almost ended. Thorne found him at 0900. Reiner was in the rust gut. He was doing exactly what he had done every morning for 8 years. He was patching a coolant valve in the secondary scrubber. He was wearing his second-best coverall. He was humming very quietly the song from the lighthouse story. He was thinking about how in about 6 hours he was going to walk onto a ship made of bone and crystal and never come back. The door to the maintenance bay slid open. 3 security guards walked in. Then a man in a sharp black suit. "Engineer Halstead," the man in the suit said. Reiner looked up. He knew who it was before he saw the face. The suit had a particular cut, the kind of cut you can only get when your employer has the legal department of an entire star system underwriting your dry cleaning. "Thorne." The man inclined his head. "You know me. I know your suit." A thin, polite curl at one side of his mouth. "I'd like a moment of your time." Reiner gestured at the coolant valve. "I'm at work." "Yes," Thorne said. "About that." He produced a tablet. He showed Reiner a document. The document had Reiner's name on it. The document also had the words "Emergency Protective Custody" on it. The document also had Voorhees' signature on it, and in smaller print at the bottom, the seal of the Ethelgard Central Office. "You are now in protective custody, Mr. Halstead." "Protective from what?" "From yourself. We have reason to believe you pose a danger to the station's neural infrastructure following yesterday's incident in Section 9. You demonstrated an unauthorized capability. We need to evaluate that capability in a secure environment." "A lab." "Mr. Halstead, a lab, Thorne. You're talking about a lab. We're talking about a series of evaluations conducted by qualified medical professionals for your own safety and the safety of the station." Reiner set down his wrench, very gently, onto the deck plate. He stood up. He looked at the 3 guards. He looked at Thorne. He thought about the gown of arterial red on the upper balcony. He thought about a queen with her hands ice cold around his. "I will not let them do that to you again." "Celine, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it to the ship." "Mr. Halstead," Thorne said, "don't make this difficult." "I have to," Reiner said. He didn't fight. He couldn't have. He was 32 years old and he fixed pipes for a living, and there were 3 armed guards in the room, and Thorne was wearing a sidearm under that suit, and Reiner could see the bulge of it. He let them take him. They walked him through the maintenance corridor. They walked him to a holding cell on D level. Not the brig. Worse than the brig. A small white room with a single bed and a single chair and no viewport at all. A room designed not to be felt through the mesh. They put him in the chair. Thorne sat across from him. The guards waited outside. "Now," Thorne said. "Mr. Halstead, let's talk. I have nothing to say. You have a great deal to say. You just don't know it yet." Thorne folded his hands on the table. "There is something I would like to tell you," he said. "Something the corporation has never officially told anyone. We have been running a program for the past 20 years. We call it the Quiet Asset Program. It identifies individuals like yourself, cortex null variants, static carriers, flatliners. We have been gathering them, studying them, trying to understand the genetic basis of the condition." Reiner did not move. "The first asset we acquired in this program was a man named Halstead." Reiner's mouth went dry. "Winton Halstead, of New Tucson, Earth, age 34 at the time of acquisition." A pause. "He was your father, Reiner." Reiner did not move. He could not move. "I'm sorry." He could not have heard that. Thorne kept talking. "You were told he died in a transit accident when you were 8. The transit accident was real. He was on the transit. The transit did go down. But your father did not die on that transit. He was removed from it before it crashed by a corporate retrieval team. He has been a subject of our research for the past 24 years. He is alive. He is approximately 58 years old now. He is in a research facility on Callisto 3. Reiner could not feel his hands. Thorne watched him. This was not an accident, Mr. Halstead. The condition. Your condition. It runs. We have been waiting for you to manifest a usable expression of it for some time. Yesterday's incident in Section 9 was encouraging. His voice was very gentle. I am authorized to offer you a position with the Quiet Asset Program. Reiner stared at the tabletop. I will take you to your father, Mr. Halstead. Personally, I will see to it that you have free access to him. I will arrange for the two of you to live in adjacent quarters at the research facility. You will be compensated. Your work will be voluntary. Your father has been alone for 24 years. I imagine he would like to see you. Reiner heard his own breathing. It sounded like it was coming from somewhere else. Or, Thorne said. He waited. Or what? Or, you remain here. We invoke the contract clause. You are evaluated against your will. Your father remains where he is alone for the rest of his life, possibly another 30 years. He is in good health. A long silence. That is the choice, Mr. Halstead. I will give you 1 hour to think about it. Thorne stood. He smoothed his suit. He walked to the door. He stopped. I should tell you, he said. The Vesperi delegation is scheduled to depart at 1400. Today. Their docking clamps are being released as we speak. Sovereign Vera has been briefed that her departure cannot be delayed. She will not be informed of your status. She will assume you missed the rendezvous. A small lift of one corner of his mouth. Just so you know what door you are choosing between. He left, the door locked. Reiner sat in the chair. He did not move for a long time. Inside his head, the static that had been his entire life, was doing something it had never done. It was not silent. It was screaming. A father who was alive. A father who had been alive for 24 years. He had been 8 when they told him. His mother had taken him into the kitchen. She had sat him down at the table. She had put a glass of water in front of him. She had said, Reiner, honey, there has been an accident. He had not understood the word accident for a long time. He had thought it was a place his father had gone to. He had thought for almost a year that one day his father would come home from the accident. He had stopped thinking that when he was 9. He had stopped thinking about it at all by the time he was 13. His mother had died when he was 9, a year after the accident. She had stopped eating. They called it grief. He had been raised by his mother's sister in Phoenix, a kind woman, a tired woman, a woman who did not know how to talk to a boy whose head did not connect to the link. He had never, not once, considered the possibility that his father was alive. He thought now that he had spent his whole life being a doorway to a man on a research station on Callisto 3, who he had not seen since he was 8. He thought about Celine. He thought about a small, dry kiss in a closet. I will come for you. In the morning. Be ready. He thought about a Vesperi ship undocking from Bay 19 at 1400 hours. He looked up at the ceiling of the small white room. He thought he might throw up. He didn't. Maintenance worker training. It comes in handy. He stood up. He walked to the door. It was locked. Of course it was locked. Sealed magnetic bolt. The kind they used on the brig, not designed to be picked from inside. He could hear the guards in the corridor. 2 of them. One was sneezing. Allergy season on the station was hard on anyone with sinuses. He sat back down in the chair. He breathed. He thought. He had one tool. He always had one tool. The tool was that he was against everyone's expectations an engineer. The tool was that this station was in its bones his. He had been crawling through these ducts since he was 24. He knew the air handlers. He knew the service panels. He knew which sections had been retrofitted in the past 5 years. He knew which had not. He looked up, at the ceiling. There, a service panel, standard issue. The screws were the cheap kind, the kind they used after the budget cut in 47. He reached up. He could just reach. He twisted the first screw out with his thumbnail. He thought very clearly, I am not going to a lab. He thought very clearly, I am not leaving her on that ship without me. He thought very clearly, I am going to walk into Bay 19 at 1400 hours, and I am going to find out before the rest of my life what my father has to say to me about being a doorway. The second screw came out. The third, The fourth. The panel came down. Above it was a maintenance shaft, 2 meters wide, 8 meters long. It dumped, if he remembered the schematic correctly, directly into the secondary atmospheric channel of D-deck, which connected to the service tunnels of C-deck, which fed all the way up, to the private hangars, to Bay 19. A small grim pull at the side of his mouth. The kind of look a tired engineer gives a stubborn machine when he has finally figured out what the machine has been hiding from him. He climbed up. He pulled the panel back into place behind him. He started crawling. His chronometer said it was 12:48. He had 72 minutes. He had a queen to catch. Somewhere far above him in the polished glass corridor of the upper observation deck, Sovereign Celine Vera was standing very still by a viewport. Her robes were a quiet, steady silver. Her ears were tilted toward the lower decks. She was waiting. She was telling herself, with the discipline of a woman who had stood at the head of a house for 120 years, not to be afraid. Be ready, she had told him. She did not yet know that the corporation had taken him. She would. In about 11 minutes, somewhere lower. Thorne was sipping coffee in a service room and watching the chronometer with the patience of a man who had done this kind of thing before. Somewhere lower than that, Voorhees was in his office signing forms. He was very pleased with himself. He had been told this morning that there might be a bonus involved, a substantial one. He was already imagining the suit he would buy. And somewhere lower than all of them, in a service shaft that smelled like coolant and old solder, a 32-year-old maintenance worker was crawling on his elbows toward a docking bay with 71 minutes on the clock and a queen on the other side. He was breathing hard. His teeth were set in something that was not quite a grin. He was, for the first time in 5 years, not at all empty. He was, for the first time in 32 years, a doorway. And he was finally walking through. Part 3. The shaft was hot. The shaft was always hot. He had crawled through this exact shaft maybe 40 times in 8 years. Coolant runs, filter swaps. The one time a hydraulic line had burst and he'd come out the other side covered in something the color of bad mustard. Today it was hotter, because his blood was in it. He kept crawling. Elbows, knees, elbows, knees. The metal under his palms slick with something he wasn't going to look at right now. The bones of his hands were buzzing. His head was buzzing. The static, the wide, quiet field. It was no longer wide. It was no longer a field. It was a road. A single road, pointed straight at Bay 19. Celine, he thought, without meaning to. The thought went down the road and came back, not as an answer, as a feeling, as if the road itself had something to say. He almost laughed. He almost cried. He kept crawling. Tobin's voice came through the comms unit at his collar. Halstead. He froze. Halstead, are you on this channel? He did not answer. Halstead. Pick up. It's Tobin. I am alone. I'm in the workshop. Pick up. He pressed the button. I'm here. Halstead. I'm here, Tobin. A long pause. Are you in a shaft? I am in a shaft. Are you supposed to be in a shaft? Officially, no. Tobin. I am not in any shaft. Officially. I am being protectively held in a cell on D level. Right. The cell is unoccupied at the moment. Right. Don't tell anyone. Tobin made a sound. It was not exactly a laugh. Halstead. Yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone. Okay. I'm telling you something else. Okay. Voorhees is in the upper hangars. Bay 17. Bay 18. He's moving guards. He's looking for you. He thinks you're going to make a run at the Vesperi ship. I am. I know you are. Tobin paused. You should know. The corporation knows you are too. They've cleared the route between D-level and the private hangars. Soft clearance, plain clothes. 6 of them at least. They want to take you alive and quiet, and they want her to leave without you. Rayner stopped crawling. He pressed his forehead against the metal. The metal was warm. He thought with great care about the kind of person who would arrange such a thing. The kind of person who would let a queen leave a station thinking the man she had just decided to love had simply not bothered to show up. He thought about Thorne in his sharp black suit. He hated him with a clean, cold hatred. The first clean, cold hatred he had felt in his entire life. Tobin, he said. Yeah. There is a service hatch on the inner wall of Bay 19, behind the secondary coolant array, 3 meters above the deck, maintenance only. You can't see it from the bay floor. Yeah. I'm going to come out of it at 13:58. Yeah. I need you to do one thing for me. Tell me. I need you to get to Terminal 7 in the workshop. I need you to send a maintenance flag. Service request. Vespery vessel undocking systems. Bay 19. I need their undocking sequence delayed by exactly 4 minutes. The terminal will accept a low priority flag from an engineer of my rank. They will not check it before 14:02. A long silence. Halstead. Yeah. You're asking me to put my name on a delay order? Yeah. To delay a Sovereign-class Vespery departure? Yeah. So that you can crawl out of a wall and onto her ship? Yeah. Tobin breathed. Tobin breathed. You're insane. I know. You're a flatliner who has lost his mind over a woman. Yes. I am going to lose my job over this. Probably. You owe me a drink for the rest of my life. I will buy you the whole bar. The whole bar. The whole bar. Tobin. A pause. Okay, Halstead. Okay, I'll send the flag. Don't get shot. I won't. Don't get shot. I won't. Don't. Tobin. Yeah. Thank you. The comms went quiet. He crawled. He crawled. The shaft turned. He turned with it. He came out into the wider service tunnel on C deck. He could hear very faintly the hum of the upper-level fans. He could hear footsteps, plain clothes, moving above him. He kept his breathing flat. He passed under the men hunting him. He kept moving. He thought somewhere in the back of his head that he had spent his whole life moving very quietly under everyone, slipping past Voorhees, slipping past Marin, slipping past every person who had ever called him empty. He had always been invisible. It had never until today been a tactical advantage. It was now. His teeth set in the dark. He kept moving. 13:56, service hatch, 3 meters above the bay, 19 deck. He pressed his ear to the metal. He could hear the ship. A low hum. The luminous reach. He'd seen schematics. It was a needle. A silver needle the length of 3 city blocks. It looked in the briefing tape like something that had been carved out of the inside of a star. It was docked. It was still docked. Tobin had done it. Rayner pulled the hatch. He came down out of the wall like a stagehand falling out of a curtain. He landed on a coolant pipe with his left shin. He fell off the coolant pipe onto the deck plate. He came up on one knee. Bay 19 was empty. It was empty because every Vespery guard on the ramp was looking the wrong way. Up the main hangar corridor, toward Bay 17, toward the noise. Voorhees was shouting at someone. A guard was barking back. Tobin's delay flag had been received and the captain of the Reach had ordered an inspection of the dock seal. Standard Vespery paranoia. The kind of paranoia that bought a maintenance worker exactly the 4 minutes he needed. He limped up the ramp. The guards on the ramp saw him. They did not stop him. The lead guard, a Vespery woman whose robes were already shimmering in a pattern of cautious gold, made eye contact with him. She did not speak. She tilted her head. She stepped back 1/2 step to let him pass. He understood then with a kind of slow, stunned clarity that Celine had told them. That she had told them before she left her room this morning that a human engineer might come. That if he did, they were to let him through. That if he did not, they were to inform her after they were in warp. He climbed into the airlock. He almost did not make it. His left shin had something wrong with it. There was blood in his boot. He was breathing the kind of breath you breathe when you have just spent an hour and a half on your knees in a duct on adrenaline alone. The airlock cycled. He stepped onto the bridge of the Vespery Sovereign vessel. The bridge did not look like a bridge. It looked like the inside of a frozen wave. Translucent walls, soft pulsing light. Vespery crew in standing poses around a central crystal pedestal. The light from the pedestal washed everything in a gentle silver. Celine was at the pedestal. Her back was to him. She was wearing the deep midnight robes of departure. Her hands were folded. Her ears were tilted back. She was by the angle of her shoulders holding herself very carefully together. The way a woman holds herself together when she has prepared for the last hour to be told that the man she came back for did not come. He took one step forward. He said her name. Celine. She did not turn. She did not move. She closed her eyes. She put one hand flat against the crystal. She breathed out. Then she turned. She turned slowly. She looked at him. She looked at his coverall, at the blood on his shin, at the grease on his face, at his hands which were shaking, which would not stop shaking, which were the hands of a man who had crawled through 800 meters of duct on the strength of one small dry kiss. She did not run to him. She walked. 3 steps, 4, 5. She crossed the bridge with the slow-held grace of a woman who had spent 120 years walking across important rooms. She stopped in front of him. She put her hand on his cheek. She said one word. You. Yeah. You came. I said I would. You did not look like you would. I had a detour. She started to laugh. She started to cry. She did both the way she had cried before, the way moonlight cries without sound. He put his arms around her. She put her arms around him. The Vesperi crew on the bridge very politely looked at the floor. We have to go, he said. Into her hair. We are going, she said. Into his shoulder. Now. Now. She stepped back. She did not let go of his hand. She turned to her captain. Take us out, she said. Full burn. Do not request clearance. The captain's robes flickered gold and white. Acknowledgement, astonishment, loyalty. All 3. Yes, my sovereign. The airlock sealed. The docking clamps released. The luminous reach pulled out of Bay 19 of the Ethelgard Zenith. Slowly at first, then faster, then with the smooth, controlled acceleration of a needle being drawn out of a wound. Behind it on the upper observation deck, Investigator Thorne was watching through the viewport with his hands folded behind his back. He was not surprised. He was not pleased. He was. Adjusting. He turned to his lieutenant. 3 threshers, he said. Sir, in system. Pursuit course. I want her stopped before the nebula. Sir, the diplomatic implications. I will handle the diplomatic implications. The lieutenant saluted. The lieutenant left. Thorne stood by the viewport a long time. A small, slow lift at the corner of his mouth. The kind of look a man wears when an inconvenience has revealed itself to be exactly the inconvenience he had prepared for. He had, after all, prepared for this. He had been preparing for this since Rainer's 8th birthday. The bridge of the luminous reach was quiet. Vesperi quiet. The kind of quiet that has many small, soft sounds inside it. The hum of the pedestal. The breath of the crew. The ship itself, which had a faint, slow pulse like a sleeping animal. Rainer sat on the floor with his back against a wall. A medic had wrapped his shin. The medic had not asked how it had happened. Celine was kneeling next to him. She had not let go of his hand. She would not, he was starting to understand, be letting go of his hand for some time. 3 threshers, the captain reported, above them in the projected display. Yes, the Vesperi counselor Voris said. He was tall and old, and his robes were the color of a thunderhead. 3. We expected 1. We expected 2. Celine said, quietly. 3 is extravagant. 3 is Thorne. It is. Voris turned to Rainer. He looked at him a long time. You, he said. Rainer blinked. You are the human. I am the human. You are the one she did not sleep without. That is, one way of putting it, you are the one she has just risked a war for. He was finding it very hard to swallow, apparently. Voris's robes shimmered. He nodded once. Then he turned to Celine. Sovereign, we are 11 minutes from the nebula. Our warp engines are cycling. We need 20 minutes. We will not have 20. No, the threshers will be in firing range in 7. Yes, they will use the broadcast pulse. Yes. Celine exhaled. She looked at Rainer. The broadcast pulse, she said, slowly. So you understand, is a weapon, a directed neural amplification. For humans, it causes paralysis. Briefly, For us, it is a scream that does not end. It overloads our resonance. It turns the gift against us. It is how the coalition has in the past ended Vesperi insurgencies. It is the end of thought. Rayner stared at the projection. How long? We have 7 minutes. He stood up. His shins screamed. He did not care. You have an amplifier, he said. On this ship. Celine blinked. What? The pedestal. It amplifies the sovereign's resonance to the whole crew, doesn't it? You stand there and the ship feels what you feel. Yes, Boris said, slowly. If I stand there, with her, what happens? The bridge went very still. Boris turned to look at Celine. She said nothing. She was looking at Rayner. Rayner, she said, I know you don't know. I do. You don't. Celine. She put her hand against his chest, the bandage on his shin, the blood, the shaking, the grease. Boris answered, if you stand on the pedestal with her engineer, you will not be amplifying her resonance. You will be amplifying the absence of it. Your doorway, as she called it, will become the entire ship. Okay. And the pulse. When it hits, it will go into me. Yes. Through me. Yes. And out. Yes. How much, he said calmly. How much can I take? We do not know, Boris said. Honestly, no one has ever tried this. We have models. The models suggest you will sustain neural damage at the first pulse, permanent damage at the second. The third is, statistically, fatal. Celine closed her eyes. Rayner, she said, we are not doing this. We are doing this. We are not. Celine, I will not lose another man to my noise. He took her hand off his chest. He held it. He said very quietly, Celine, I am not a candle. I told you. I'm a doorway. I told you, doorways don't burn down. They just get walked through. She started to cry, without sound. Again. 5 minutes, the captain said, quietly, from his post. Rayner looked at her. He looked at her until she looked back. Celine. She did not answer. Celine, listen to me. There is a man on a planet I have never been to who has been a doorway in a small white room for 24 years. By himself, because he didn't know there was anyone else on the other side. I know he's there now. I'd like to meet him. For that to happen, I need this ship to be in the nebula in 7 minutes. So, he kissed her forehead. Quick, dry. The way she had kissed his lips the night before, when both their lives had just decided to ruin each other in the same direction. So get up, he said, and stand with me. She got up. She stood with him. They walked together to the pedestal. She placed her hand flat on the crystal. He placed his hand flat over hers. The pedestal flared. The ship's lights, which had been a soft silver, went a deep, deep black. The black of a sky with no stars. The black of the moment before a soul speaks. The Vesperi crew gasped. As one, hands to their ears. Boris staggered back. He whispered, he has eaten our resonance. Yes. Celine whispered, he has. Rayner did not feel proud. He did not feel powerful. He felt very small, very tired, very 32. He felt his shin. He felt his hands, which were no longer shaking. He felt the wide, quiet field, which was no longer a field. It was a country now. It had a horizon. The horizon stretched all the way to the hull and a little way beyond. He could feel the void out there. He could feel the pursuing ships. He could feel on the bridge of the lead thresher a man in a sharp black suit with his hands folded behind his back watching. The first pulse hit. It did not sound like a sound. It was a wall of pure, unadulterated noise, the screaming of 3,000 humans on the zenith, the grief of Voorhees who had never felt grief and had only ever felt envy, the calculated cold of Thorn, the link weaponized, amplified, sharpened into a point. It hit the ship. It hit Rayner. He took it. He took it the way you take a wave. He let his knees soften. He let the road behind him open. He let it pour through. It was a great deal. His nose started to bleed, then his ears, then his mouth. It hurts, he thought. He had time to think. It hurts. Through it. Through it. He sent the noise down the road. He let it go where the noise had always gone his whole life, all 32 years. The wide, quiet country opened. The noise went in. The noise went down. The noise went away. The first pulse ended. He was on his knees. He had not noticed going down. Celine was holding him under the arms. He laughed. Wet, red, through his teeth. 1. She did not laugh. Rainer. 1. She wiped blood off his chin with her own hand. Don't speak. I'm fine. You are not fine. I am fine enough. Voris was on his knees too. The other counselors. The captain was clutching the comms console. The Vesperi crew were upright but barely. The pulse, the model said, was supposed to fry them, to leave them screaming, to turn the inside of the luminous reach into a butcher shop. It had not. Because of him. The captain spoke, hoarse, from the floor. Second pulse incoming. When? 40 seconds. Rainer stood up. Celine tried to stop him. Celine, he said. The corner of his mouth crooked up. He could feel his teeth were red. 40 seconds. We have a job. She put her forehead against his. She did not speak. He turned back to the crystal. He put his hand on it. The second pulse hit. It hit harder. It hit much harder. The threshers were stacking the signal. 3 transmitters, 1 target. The wall was not a wall this time. It was a mountain. It was a falling mountain. It came down on his skull, and he felt for the first time in his life his neural implant, the dead, useless link behind his ear, light up like a coal. He screamed. He had not screamed in 20 years. He screamed. The mountain came down. The road behind him cracked. The country shook. He felt his eyes roll back. He felt Celine's hands on his face. He felt very far away Voris shouting something. About a third pulse. About not surviving. About not surviving the third pulse. The mountain kept coming. Rainer. He could not answer. Rainer. Hold on. He could not hear. He could feel her hand on his cheek. He could feel her other hand grip his hand on the crystal. He could feel her doing something. He did not know what she was doing. He felt deep in the country a tremor. A bright tremor. Like a second road opening up next to his. A second doorway. Right next to his. Voris screamed, Sovereign, don't! She did it anyway. He felt her break. Not break, cut. She cut something inside herself. The thing that connected her to the 7th house. The thing that made her a vessel. The thread of resonance that had been wound around her since she was 6 years old. She cut it. She cut it cleanly. The collective was gone from inside her. She was hollow now. She was a doorway. She came into the country with him. The mountain hit them both. It came down on 2 doorways. It did not crack the second. The second was new. The second had been just born. The second had 120 years of compressed grief and joy and love and noise inside it, and it was by virtue of being newly empty very strong. The 2 doorways drank the mountain. They drank the second pulse. They drank it down. He came back to himself. He was on his knees. She was on her knees. They were holding each other up at the pedestal. Both of them bleeding from the nose. Both of them looking at each other like a couple of children who had just gotten away with something extremely dangerous. 2, he whispered. 2, she whispered. Third pulse incoming. The captain said, from the floor. He was crying. Vesperi tears. Silver. Down his cheeks. 20 seconds. Rainer looked at Celine. She looked at him. You. He said, me. You broke the link. Yes, you broke the link, Celine. You're not connected. You can't be a sovereign anymore. I know. You did that. I did. You did that. For you. He could not speak. She kissed his bloody mouth. It was not a small dry kiss. It was the second kiss. It was the kiss of 2 doorways who had just stood under a mountain together and walked out. 10 seconds, the captain said. They stood up. They stood together. They put their hands on the crystal. The third pulse came. It came not as a mountain. It came as a god. It was the whole signal. All three threshers, stacked, tuned, designed. Thorn had not stacked the third pulse to break a ship. He had stacked the third pulse to break a soul. Specifically, the soul of a 32-year-old engineer he had identified 24 years ago as a future asset. The god came down. The two doorways opened. They opened all the way. Rayner felt in the wide, quiet country that was now twice the size every voice on the three threshers. 1,104 humans, each of them connected, each of them riding the link signal of the pulse. He felt them. He felt their fears. He felt their commanders barking orders. He felt the gunner on the lead thresher with his hand on the firing switch. He felt the captain. He felt Thorn calm watching. He did not send anything back. He did not need to. He just kept the doorways open. The pulse went down them. All of it. Every last drop. It went into the wide, quiet country. It went down the road. It went into the place under everything where his 32 years of silence lived. And it was Eaton. And then because the doorway was now twice as wide, because the doorway had a queen in it, because the country could now hold not just noise but a whole signal, he turned the doorway around. Just a quarter turn. He sent. Not noise. Quiet. The quiet of a small kitchen in New Tucson where a 6-year-old boy was being read a story by his mother. The quiet of a docking ring where a woman with silver ears had paused in front of him and almost heard him for the first time. The quiet of a small, dry kiss in a closet. He sent. He sent. He sent. On the bridge of the lead thresher, 1,104 humans had their link feeds go suddenly completely, absolutely silent. For 3 full seconds, none of them could feel anything. Not each other, not the ship, not their own anxieties, nothing. It was the longest 3 seconds of their lives. The gunner pulled his hand off the firing switch. The captain fell out of his chair. The pilots took their hands off the controls and pressed them to their ears. Investigator Thorn, who had been standing at the viewport with his hands folded behind his back, dropped to one knee. His mouth opened. No sound came out. The luminous reach made the nebula. She slipped into the veil at the last possible second. A silver needle. A scratch of light. Gone. On the bridge of the reach, Rayner Halstead fell. Celine Vera caught him. The lights came up. Soft lavender. The crew breathed. Voris wept. Celine held Rayner's face in her hands and whispered to him for a long time. He did not hear her. He was somewhere very deep in the country. He was somewhere with his mother and a small glass of water and a story about a sailor. When he came back, hours later, the ship was at warp. The first thing he saw was her face. The second thing he saw was the warp. Outside the viewport, the colors, violet, emerald, gold, the veil. A nebula carved out of every rainbow Earth had ever broken. The third thing he understood was that she had broken her link. For him, forever. He tried to sit up. She would not let him. Celine. Don't. Celine. Be quiet. You broke it. I did. You can't be a sovereign anymore. I cannot. What did you do? I chose. She kissed his forehead. She said, I am no longer the vessel of the 7th house. I am, as of this morning, simply Celine Vera, a woman with a quiet head. The first quiet head my people have produced in 9,000 years. Rayner started laughing. He laughed. He laughed until it hurt. He laughed until he cried. She laughed with him. Wet, silver. Both of them on the floor of a starship. It took the corporation 11 days to come for them. They did not come with ships. They came with lawyers, then with politicians, then with very, very large amounts of money. Then when none of that worked with the truth, which Celine had been quietly preparing on the long ride home. The truth was a stack of documents. The truth was a Vesperi auditor's report prepared in 8 days by 3 of the best legal minds in the Vale. The truth was that Investigator Thorn had not been authorized by the Terran Coalition Central Office to detain Rayner Halstead. The truth was that he had forged authorization signatures. The truth was that the Quiet Asset Program was by coalition law illegal. The truth was that Winton Halstead, age 58, had been held without his consent at a research facility on Callisto 3 for the past 24 years. The truth was that Chief Voorhees had been embezzling station funds for the past 5 years and had been receiving direct payments from investigator Thorne for the cooperation of engineer Halstead. The truth was a single broadcast, released unedited to every coalition news outlet at the same hour. Voorhees lost his job inside of a day. He lost his pension inside of a week. He lost the suit he had been planning to buy. Thorne lost more than that. He lost his position. He lost his commission. He lost his name. He was, by the time the coalition was done with him, a man in a small room with no viewport, watching the same news cycle on repeat, waiting for a hearing, the kind of hearing that does not end with a return to your life. Winton Halstead was released. He flew on a Vesperi diplomatic shuttle from Callisto 3 to Valoris Prime. He arrived at the Sovereign Spire on a quiet evening. The light from the twin suns was the color of clean honey. A man stood on the lower terrace. He was 32 years old. He had a scar on his shin that would be there the rest of his life. He had a quiet behind his eyes that had a new shape to it. He had grease on the cuff of his sleeve. The shuttle hatch opened. A man stepped out. 58, lean, gray at the temples. A face Rayner had not seen since he was 8, except in one photograph his aunt had kept in a drawer in Phoenix. Winton Halstead looked at his son. Winton Halstead said nothing. Rayner walked up the ramp. Rayner said nothing. 2 doorways stood on a ramp in the gold light of 2 foreign suns. Celine watched from a distance. She did not interrupt. They embraced. They embraced for a long time. Winton put his hand on the back of Rayner's head, the way a father does when the father has had 24 years to imagine the gesture and has done it only in his head and never on any actual head. They walked into the spire together 6 months later. The lower hydroponic levels of the Sovereign Spire were quiet. They were quiet in a new way. They had been built 6,000 years ago by Vesperi engineers who could not stop singing at their machines. The machines had very politely ignored them. The pipes had calcified, the filters had dimmed. The Vesperi had for the past several centuries tried to feel the machines into health. A human engineer had a different approach. He used a wrench. Rayner was on his knees in front of a primary intake valve. He was wearing the same coverall he had worn on the Ethelgard Zenith. The same one. He had patched it twice. He had not been able to bring himself to throw it out. 3 Vesperi children were sitting on the floor a respectful 3 meters away. They were waiting. He tightened a bolt. He set the wrench down. He looked at the children. "Okay," he said. The smallest one, a girl with pale lavender robes and small downy ears, lifted her chin. "Okay," she said. "What kind tonight?" She thought. "Hard. A long one," she said. He laughed. "A long one." "Yes." "Okay." He sat down on the deck plate with the children. He pulled his knees up. He thought. He started. "A long time ago," he said, "on a planet I have never been to, there was a sailor." He stopped. His own voice, saying that sentence, had done something. He frowned. He looked at the children. The children were looking at him politely. The children were used to him stopping. The children had learned in the past 6 months that the human engineer sometimes paused in the middle of his sentences because he was hearing something. They had learned to wait. His own voice, a long time ago, on a planet I have never been to. There was a sailor. It was not the first time he had told a story, but it was the first time he had heard himself tell that exact opening. In that exact tone, in that exact rhythm, in that exact pause between sailor and the next word. He knew the next word. He knew the next word before he said it. He had known the next word his entire life. His name was Henry. He sat very still on the deck plate. "Rayner," the lavender girl said, politely. His mother had read him that story, in a kitchen, in New Tucson, when he was 6 years old. He had been sitting on a small wooden stool. There had been a window above the sink. It had been raining. His mother had been wearing a yellow shirt. She had been holding a paperback book. She had been smiling. She had said, "A long time ago on a planet I have never been to, there was a sailor. His name was Henry. He had not, in 26 years, remembered that. He had told that story to Celine. He had told it to her on the second night. He had thought at the time that he had made it up. He had not. He had been given it. By his mother, by a woman in a yellow shirt, in a small kitchen, a long time ago. Reiner." The girl tugged on his sleeve. He looked down. She was studying his face. "You stopped," she said. "I know," he said. "Are you sad?" He thought about that. He cried. It was a small cry. Quiet. The kind of cry that has no shape. The lavender girl put her small downy hand on his arm. "It is okay," she said, solemnly, "to be sad, the sovereign says." "Yes," he said, "the sovereign does say." He gathered himself. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand. He looked up. "A long time ago," he said, "on a planet I have never been to, there was a sailor. His name was Henry. The children settled. He told them the story. He told them all of it. His voice when he told it sounded almost like his mother's voice. Almost. Different in pitch, same in rhythm, same in the small pause she had always taken between Henry and the next part of the sentence. He told it slowly. He told it well. It was a good story. It had been a good story for 32 years. When he was done, the children rose. They bowed their small heads. They walked out of the hydroponic bay in their pale lavender robes. He sat on the deck plate. Footsteps. He looked up. Celine was standing at the door. She was holding two cups. One held a terrible synthetic coffee he had taught her to make. One held a Vesperi tea that smelled like crushed mint in warm sand. She had been there a while. He could tell. She had heard. He could tell. She handed him the coffee. She sat down next to him on the deck plate. She did not say anything. He put his head on her shoulder. She put her hand on his head, the way Winton had 6 months ago on a ramp in the Honeylight. They sat there. For a while. Outside the bay, two suns were setting over a turquoise sea. The wind was blowing across the Singing Mountains, and the mountains were doing what they had done for 1,000,000 years. Humming. The kind of sound that came up through the floor and into your chest, and reminded you that the universe was a place that occasionally remembered its own name. "She is the one who told you to come find me," he said. Celine shifted. She did not pretend she did not understand. "Yes," she said. "In the green light, in the rust gut, in the storm." Yes, it was her voice, the one I followed, from your door, through your station, into your bed. It was. She gave you the story. She gave you the voice that gave you the story. She gave you the way of telling it that made me sleep. She did. He drank his terrible coffee. He looked at the two suns. "I have been a doorway my whole life," he said, "and I never once, in 32 years, knew who built the door." "She did," Celine said. "She did. She built it for you, so you could give it to someone." "Yeah." She held his hand. The mountains hummed. Somewhere very far away on a planet he had not been to in 8 years, a small kitchen in New Tucson sat empty in the late afternoon light. The yellow shirt his mother had worn was long gone. The paperback book was long gone. The window above the sink looked out on a different yard now. But on a deck plate in a hydroponic bay 6,000 light years away, a man sat with a woman he loved, and his mother's voice, in his own mouth, in the mouth of a 32-year-old maintenance engineer who had been called a flatliner all his life, was still being heard, was still being given, was still on a Tuesday evening helping a small lavender Vesperi child go to sleep. He understood then what he had not understood for 32 years. He had not been empty. He had been carrying, the whole time, for someone who one day would need it. He kissed the top of his queen's head. She smiled. The suns went down. Reiner Halstead, the doorway, the engineer, the flatliner, the son of Winton, the son of a woman in a yellow shirt, the man who had been called an asset on a Tuesday and had become by the next Tuesday the quietest love story his species had ever told, looked out at the gold and the turquoise and the long, slow sound of the Singing Mountains. He thought, there are people who spend their whole lives looking for love. There are people who spend their whole lives looking for glory. I was looking for a story. I had it the whole time. It was in the end my mother's voice. It was in the end the door she built me. It was in the end a queen who walked through. A small Vesperi butterfly landed on the rim of his coffee cup. Its wings pulsed with a slow emerald light. He did not move. Celine did not move. For a long, perfect moment. The universe was exactly as it should be. Quiet, steady, and finally, completely at peace.